My special guest today, you could call the complete sailor. She has won an Olympic silver medal, sailed on the Volvo Ocean Race, campaigned a NACRA and a 49er for the Olympics, and in her spare time does some sailing commentary. Welcome, Nina Curtis.
Hi, how you doing?
Really, really good. I'm super excited to have a chat to you today. So many topics to talk about. We've got the Volvo, we've got the Olympics, we've got women's sailing, and we've got commentary, which you've just dabbled in recently, which was awesome to watch and hear. So let's jump straight into it. Let's jump into the Volvo Ocean Race. You joined Team Brunel in the last Volvo Ocean Race for the leg from New Zealand to Brazil. That's the Southern Ocean the whole way. You must be a crazy lady.
Yep, I'm definitely missing a few screws, but I think the Volvo was something that I had in my sights, but I missed a lot of the, what do you call it, when you trial? I missed a lot of the trial periods with some of the teams because I was still competing in the 49er FX. And so I had still put some feelers out. And so when the opportunity came up, even though it was in the biggest dive into the deep end, I still took it. Kyle Langford helped me get on board. I think he threw my name into the suggestion box when the position opened up. And I figure, I've sailed with him often enough, like when we were more kids. And I felt like he had a pretty good idea of what I was like. He wouldn't put me in if he didn't think I could do it. So it was quite funny. I was in Washington, D.C. I was working in the fitness industry and I got the call up from Bowie, and I just put down the phone and I looked up at my cousin who I was working for at the time, and I'm like, I quit. And then I booked my flights to Sydney. I was on a plane the next 2 days, within 2 days, because I had to pass 1,000 exams. I had all of my safety at sea, but also the navigating course, and it took me 10 days. I had to get it all done before.
Oh, wow.
And so yeah, all the offshore courses, and I had to fast track a lot, and I've got a lot of people who pulled a lot of strings to get me through all of those courses. But I pulled 3 all-nighters in Sydney, trying to pass all of the coursework to get that done. And then I was doing the courses in the day, like first aid and radio operators, and anyway, a few all-nighters. And then I think I got the last result at 3 a.m, and then I was flying out at 7 a.m. the next day. So I had a few hours sleep, and then I was on a plane to Auckland. So I had to move a few mountains, but they said, if I can pass, that they'll get me on board. So I did it.
So there's a lot involved in actually being able to be on a Volvo boat. You have to have all these certificates and courses done just to even step on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you wouldn't do it any other way. It was a massive pain, but having that knowledge gives you such a good, for me, the last ocean racing I did was the Sydney to Hobart when I was 20. So it was a long time between ocean races. And so for me, it was just a great, block of time, very short block of time to get my head into navigating and all the rest of it. While I didn't use the skills, I wasn't making any decisions navigation wise on the boat. You can be a much more productive member of the team if you have a bit of an idea of at least what some of the members are doing while you're out there. So it was good.
That's unreal. That is you were really thrown the deep end, weren't you?
Yeah.
I love it. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty intense Southern Ocean Race leg from my memory, if my memory serves me correctly. What sort of breeze and wave state were you seeing down there?
Well, I the first taste of it was, even just getting out of Auckland, it was so crazy. The wind wasn't even that much, but it's quite a tight course getting up and down. I don't remember any of it. I couldn't have told you where I went. I was just heads down on the pedals. But within the first 10 minutes, I was up on the bow, helping wrestle the one of the sails down, and I copped a massive wave. I lost my hat and my sunglasses, and they were my only hat and sunglasses. Stupidly, you learn these things on the run, and got a massive ton of water down my shirt, and I got the massive Velcro patch from the sail stuck in my hair, and had to rip it off. So I like within the first hour, I was like, what have I done? And then,
that's the worst, getting wet on an ocean race.
oh,
I mean, you do get wet, but you try to avoid it as much as possible because,
I was
how
just
many
like
days was it?
21, I think, 20 or 21 days, that first leg. Yeah, and some of the biggest seas I've ever seen. And we had like, I think, we like really tragically lost a sailor in that leg. And I think that was when we heard about that, I actually got quite wobbly that day. And the guys were so good, you can only focus on, you don't even have time to really process that kind of stuff going on, because if you're not like concentrating and you're not fully in the moment with what you're doing, you put yourself and your teammates at huge amount of risk as well. So I don't know, for me, the whole every shift, every job that I had, it was just putting one foot in front of the other. I didn't try to overcomplicate it or think of the big picture or even how long we had to go. It was just like, okay, the next shift, you get woken up, you put one sock on, you put the next sock on, you find your kit, you put it on, and you go upstairs. Yeah, like as soon as you thought too big, I found it quite overwhelming. But in terms of like staying present and staying on task for like what you have to do at that time, it's pretty cool.
Waves are very hard to describe to someone if you're not there. Like, can you put it in? Would you say it's as high as like a light post outside that you sort of see the sea state, or is it
bigger
than
it
that?
just feels like
Bigger
you're in
than
the
that.
city. Like it just feels like there's skyscrapers around you, like they're just coming up at all the angles. But the other thing is you're kind of moving with it. These boats move pretty quick, so you're getting pushed along by them. But if a big one comes up behind you, you're just like, what?
Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
and with technology these days, you could really follow the boats quite well. So like there's that windy app that you can use, and you can see that like the big purple patch, and they're in the middle of it, and you're like 50 knots. Man, that must be hectic.
Yeah, we got some some
Do
pretty huge.
you
It was
remember
just
what sort of breeze?
relentless.
Do you remember what sort of breeze you would have seen at any stage where you're just like, this is beyond what I
Just
could
a
ever
bit
believe?
too much. I think you kind of miss the big hits because you're in that preparation phase. Like you kind of have the idea that it's coming, and you kind of like, I guess, on edge to see. You're kind of waiting for it. You don't know exactly when it's going to, especially at night time. So you're just on edge, and you're preparing the boat for it, making sure everything's ready for when you do need to make that change, and you're aware of what needs to happen. But in the moment, you kind of got your head, you're pretty full on.
Is there any moment from the race that stands out that in your mind you go, I'll never forget that moment or that day or something that happened?
There was one moment where so everyone gets woken up except for the reporter when you're doing a maneuver. And so I hadn't had much sleep, and I finally got down and we got called up because we had to make a jibe. And we came up, and it was that feeling of the skyscrapers kind of coming up around you. And so I went to like my post on the handles. I start the maneuvers on the handles, and I think we tried for like half an hour or 45 minutes for the right time to jibe, and you're all getting like pretty tired and worn out because you're quite a way forward on the boat, and it just wasn't happening. And so we shifted a few people around in the boat, and it ended up being Pete Burling that got us through that jibe. And so finally you can start changing everything, and then you can go back down to sleep. But in those moments I was like very aware of the sea state around you, because you're kind of in the middle of the boat holding on for dear life.
You've really got to want to be out there to do it, I reckon.
Oh, it's unreal though. It's the best. If you love sailing, honestly, waking up, you got little 4-hour days, if you're lucky, you're up there, you do your jobs, and if you're lucky, you get to go to sleep, but then you get to wake up and do it. I was in heaven, you get to go sailing many times a day.
That's actually my next question. One of the things that really interests me about the Volvo race is the shifts and the watches that you guys have got to do on the boat. Like, can you talk me through how it all works?
Yeah, so you're paired off with one person. So for me, my watch buddy was Kyle Langford, and so we would do everything together. And so we'd come on deck, and you'd be on the handles for 2 hours, and then you'd take over control of the boat for 2 hours. So he would steer and I would trim. And we had some teams that had like 2 helmsmen, but mostly Kyle, because I was quite green, Kyle did all the steering, unless he needed to pee, and then I got a few shining moments on the helm. But Yeah, and then you go back down, and often when you go down, you try to get some food in, go to the toilet if I'm lucky. But usually Pete Burling's steering then, so best of luck to me going to the toilet. He drives like a madman. And then you go to sleep. But again, if anything needs to happen, like a sail change or a jibe, like it's all hands on deck, so everyone comes up. So you can usually reef, maybe just with a few extra hands, but yeah, any kind of proper change or maneuver, you got to stack everything onto the other side. It's a fair bit of work. So
yeah, I can only imagine. And then that's my next thing. Like, do you get much sleep? Like 50 knots, massive skyscraper waves. How hard is it to sleep on one of these things?
There's an email that I wrote. You can write a few like little notes to you. I wrote to my mom and my dad and my boyfriend, and I reread one of the emails, and I'm like, sleeping is like being locked in a coffin and being thrown down a mountain feet first. You know, you're kind of like laying down flat, and you're in this little bunk, and you're just kind of jiggling down a mountain feet first. But I can sleep anywhere, so I didn't really ever have a problem. When I was sleeping, as long as I wasn't cold. You know, sometimes you've got these awesome sleeping bags that you can kind of get in quite wet and you'll wake up dry. So as long as I wasn't too cold, I could sleep pretty easily. Cool. Yeah, they were awesome.
and by the time 21 days are up and you get into Brazil, are you just wrecked?
It's weird. Like the closer you get to the finish line, the more you're kind of feeling endorphins and you're pretty excited. And so there's this huge rush, but then you get into your hotel room and you shut the door, and it's just like the silence is deafening, and that's when you're just like, I'm Michelle, I'm just so tired. Yeah. It hits you all at once. Yeah.
So another thing I really loved about the last Volvo race, and this has come with technology, is the incredible footage that we got off the boat, especially Brunel. There's a really good one of Brunel surfing down a wave and it just plants into the back of it. And it's just like, oh, that's so cool. So a lot of that was to do with drones and obviously, like I said, the technology. How many did you lose? Because surely you didn't get them all back. There's no way.
On that first Southern Ocean leg, I think we lost either 3 or 4 drones, but also like destroyed every single camera. And so when we were coming into shore, the poor guy, he just had like it looked like the 90s camcorder left. That was the only thing that was working. And he wanted to capture this amazing moment. You know, he's done all this time with us. And all of a sudden, all the boats arrive with these huge lenses and top-end technology, and he only had this tiny little camera left to record it all on. So, a lot, yeah. And a lot of the boys on the boat, you know, they kind of egg on the OVRs as well. So, you know, oh, it's good. Get the drone up there. Get it. Can you get this shot? Can you get that shot? And yeah, we had a lot of casualties, but I think we had some of the best reporters. I completely agree with you. They were pretty gutsy, let's say. Yeah.
Do you get the footage, even though you've lost the drone? Does the footage still come back to the controller or whatever that the guy's using? Because that'd be so disappointed. You get the greatest shot and then all of a sudden it's coming back and bang, it's in the ocean or something like that.
That's a really good question. I'm only guessing, but I think yes, because they're getting that. They've got the view on their device on the boat. So. Yeah. My guess is yes, but you'll have to ask a reporter, I think.
That might be another interview for the future. Get one of the Volvo reporters on board, because that would have been amazing what they've had to do to get that footage. And they did a bloody good job. I'll give them that.
They're in the trenches. They work really hard for it too, yeah.
There was that one where they went through the boat and then up the hatch and then through the sail. That was pretty cool too. So very well edited, I think.
Yeah.
So you finish the Southern Ocean race and you stay on board the boat for the rest of the race. And what turned into be an absolutely epic race. Like after 9 months, it was minutes. The result. Like, how was the rest of the experience? Because I mean, you did the Southern Ocean race straight into Hell's Gates and bang, the rest of the race not so much, but still a big journey. How did the rest of it go for you?
Oh, it was unreal. And also, like, every race for me was such a gift, because it was, when I was offered the role, it was literally just for the Southern Ocean, because they were considering often sailing like without that extra set of hands. And so I was just so grateful for each leg, and they're all like so uniquely different. You know, some of the what you'd think would be, you're like, oh, this should be pretty easy, you know, it's not that long, were super taxing races. I got most beat up on our way into Gothenburg, and I had a stack down. I had many stacks downstairs. You know, the handrails. I was like pretty little compared to a lot of the team, and I could never really reach the railings, and so I was falling over a little bit downstairs. So I had a big fall. I fell like kind of from the kitchen, and we nosedived, and I just like flew headfirst into the very front of the boat, like the bulkhead at the front head first. And so that, and then a bit got washed quite hard upstairs as well. And then I hit my head. So I had like a rough 24 hours going into that lake. So that was for me, I think probably the toughest bit of sailing that I did, just mostly because I was in like quite a lot of pain, but desperate to, you know, try to still be as of much help as possible. So but we had, you know, some of the like arrivals, like arriving into Newport, it was so foggy. And I was at the top of the mast, which was quite cool. My job's popping the battens when it gets light and foggy. And so I spent about 3 hours. I think the boys were just trying to get rid of me by then. 3 hours up the mast in super like foggy conditions. And you'd see like a shadow. And then all of a sudden, you know, Mafre would be like one boat length away, and that's as soon as you'd like, that was the first visual sighting you'd get of them. It was just incredible. It just didn't stop being like amazing, but also super different as well. Yeah, even going through the doldrums was a completely different experience. You know, there's not much wind, but it's quite like a high stress time for the teams as well, because there's just not much you can do. You're not barreling through the ocean, and so there's like quite a bit of tension. But it was unreal, the whole race. And then, as you said, finishing so close in a decision made, you know, 24 hours before, you know, we actually made that split. It was really cool.
Pretty stressful, that last leg, because it's quite shallow along that coastline there. And for what Dongfang did by going inshore, geez, that was the riskiest maneuver ever.
Yeah, and on our boat, we were quite sure that wasn't the way to go as well. So there's just, you know, in that sense, you can't be disappointed with yourself when you're making like an educated decision and everyone's pretty well behind it. So it was stressful. You just, and you don't know, they're so far away. We can't see like where they're at until they are within that radius. And so yeah, you're just crossing your fingers and hoping, but you're pretty happy that you're on your way home as well.
And your confidence must have just been getting higher and higher every leg that you did, you know, staying on the boat and being accepted more and more with the team, because clearly you must have been doing a great job if they want to keep you on board. So it must have been great endorphins, great sense of self-worth.
Yeah, I just think the biggest thing maybe for aspiring ocean racers is, you know, I was like trying to be really aware of like how people were feeling and where they were on that day, and just try to, I guess, be the hands and be helpful, say yes, not complaining, and just generally enjoying it can go a really long way, I think, in the sense of if a team is like super heated, people aren't making good decisions, and you just don't want that tension. So in terms of like, yeah, being enthusiastic and really like being there when anyone needs you for whatever job, yeah, just saying yes served me quite well. So yeah, I did build my confidence, but I definitely am the first to say that I was pretty inexperienced walking on, and yeah, but if you just say yes, you can only get better, can't you? Really, that's what I kept saying.
Exactly. I think it's a great attitude to have. I've got a couple more questions about the Volvo, and then we'll go on to the next topic. But Team Brunel had quite the impressive sailor list. You said Pete Burling, your crew, or your watchmate Kyle Langford, and just to name a few. What was it like sailing and learning off those guys and being with them for 24/7, really?
It was the coolest thing ever. And I have like so much respect for every sailor on board that boat, and everyone having something very individual to give to the team as well. Sailing with Abby was it's nearly a life goal. I find her the most inspiring female sailor. You know, she was our boat captain. If something broke, you know, it stopped with her, and she's bulletproof. She's the most impressive sailor. So having the opportunity of sailing with her, and she's really like breaking the gender, you know, gap in sailing as well. And so she's just so highly respected in the team. But we also had this really cool like balance between like young, let's say inexperienced ocean racers, and like older, very highly experienced, been there, done that sailors. And so it was quite interesting, even the combinations of the two, you know, the two watches, and the influence that they would have on the amount of sail area up, and you know, the I guess the risk reward ratios in between, like the experience, like people who've been on board when it's gone bad before, and people who don't know that limit and want to keep testing and see what the boat's capable of. So yeah, it was really incredible. I just have so much respect for every single sailor, and that made my job really easy. You know, I was just on there to learn as much as possible, and it was incredible.
That's so cool. So my last question about the Volvo, and now called the Ocean Race, future ocean races. Are we going to be seeing you on a foiling a mocha for the next race? Because they look mental.
They look mental, and in terms of holding on downstairs, I just think it will be a wild race. Look, the boats look awesome, and my motto's always been like, I'll just say yes. So if a great opportunity comes along, I'll absolutely seize it with two hands and jump on it. And so yeah, I'm just waiting to see. I put a few feelers out, but you know, the world's in a bit of turmoil at the moment as well, so it's been a bit of a difficult time, I think, for a lot of the campaigns and the sailors as well. So yeah, just wait and see. But I'm always I like to have, you know, be able to drop whatever you're doing and jump on a special experience. So yeah, don't rule me out.
Well, look, I know for a fact that all the teams watch Shooting the Breeze with Ronstan, and now that you've said that, the phone will be ringing off the hook.
Call me up.
That'd be awesome. All right, so we'll jump into the next topic, which is the Olympics. So you won the silver medal with your great mates Olivia Price and Lucinda Whitty in the women's match racing in London. Yeah. It must be awesome to share that with two other people for the rest of your life. Like, you're always going to be able to have these sick reunions where it's just the three of you, and you're just like, yep, we've got a silver. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was. It was especially cool because it's quite unusual, you know, to win a medal at your first Olympics, but also we were quite a relatively new combination in the grand scheme of things over the 4 years. And so it just, all came together at the right time. So, always very grateful for that, because I think, say, with my second Olympic campaign, it was quite humbling. You know, you realize how many things have to go right at the right time to find that kind of magic spot. So I think I've got much more respect for the magic that happened that year, like especially in the more recent campaign as well.
So yeah, talk me through the final, because it was against Spain and it ended up 3-2. Like, that's tight. Like, it was a death, you know, it was a decider to who got the goal.
It was a scramble too. Like, we had the wildest conditions, what we were expecting of Weymouth, you know, but the racing before, we were racing the whole time. Honestly, we were racing from start to finish, but generally the conditions were like what we call quite mild, and we were always like tucked up under, so we were always expecting a bit more flat water. And all of a sudden in this finals race, you know, we had these huge seas, and like, we were just surfing these massive waves downwind. So it definitely didn't catch us off guard. We were prepared for it, but it definitely made the finals racing a really different feel to the rest of the racing that we had. I mean, we won the semi-final race to get into the gold medal race by about this much on the finish line in a glass out, you know, and then the next time you're on the start line, you're just in this wild kind of way. It just goes to show you never know. Like, you cannot expect a thing of an Olympic venue or anything. Expect nothing.
Yeah, the conditions are never like this here.
How many times do you hear that?
Yeah, exactly. You did say before the lead up to the Olympics, the Aussie team had quite a large squad of ladies to choose from there, and your crew, the crews were getting mixed up, swapped around. I mean, how did the three of you stand out from the rest to get the spot for the Olympics?
I think I've seen a lot of new classes now after being the match racing was new, the NACRA was new when I was doing it, and so was the 49er FX. And the one thing that really stands out to me is that the competition and the way that people are sailing the boats is evolving like super quickly. And so I think in those new classes, unless you're willing to throw everything you know out the window, you know, every month, every week in the last week, you know, because it's changing so quickly. I think that's really how the combination that we had, that we were able to, it's quite humbling, you know, you realize that now someone's doing it better, so now you've got to do it this way. And then now someone, you know, now the French are doing this better, so you've got to change. So you've got to be like super adaptive in that sense. I mean, we're seeing it again now in the new NACRA foiling class. Like these poor guys, they're in COVID lockdown and you're still trying to figure out what everyone's doing. So, you know, back to the match racing, it was a bit more like, I would say, tactical rather than how you sail the boat. We kind of figured that out, but how people were, you know, maneuvering around the racetrack was more what was developing through that time. And so, yeah, I think that's how it happened. And our coach Ewan as well, he was kind of, you know, happy to keep an eye out, but also working with us as well. So yeah, we're really lucky.
Yeah, it was the perfect combination. Like I said, that one race would have got the gold, but still was still amazing anyway. So the next Olympic cycle, you switched it up a bit and you jumped on a NACRA 17 with quite an old guy, Darren Bundock, old grandpa.
Yeah.
Grandpa there. I know him quite well and happy to tease him here. Together, you two got really close for rare. Like, you were probably out of the gun straight away, the leading team for the 4-year cycle, and got pipped on the line by Jason and Lisa, who went on to win the silver. How was it, the 4 years of sailing a catamaran? Because it's a fair change up from match racing with two other ladies to sailing with an old guy.
It was wild. And, you know, it's kind of like going from, I don't know, a sport like soccer and then transitioning to rugby. You know, that's what I would liken it to. The skill set, the hands and feet, you're kind of learning. And then even bringing it into a multi-hull as well was a whole nother game changer. But I actually started with Josh McKnight in the first year in the NACRA, and that was like a crash course because we were both, you know, learning the ins and outs of catamarans. I think I spent more time swimming than I did sailing that year, but it was good to have a bash. And I was also sailing the 49er FX at the same time in that first year. And so that committing to 2 campaigns in 1 year was quite a lot. But for me, I realized how much I didn't know. And so throwing myself into 2 unknowns to me seemed like the best way to upskill myself in fleet racing, trapezing, learning a catamaran and the skiff. You know, they were quite different skill sets, but it made it was good because then when I stepped on with Bundy that year later, I'd at least got a little bit of embarrassing mistakes out of the way before I jumped on. You know, he was one of my heroes growing up. It was like a pretty awesome opportunity for me to jump on. And yeah, we were super successful and we really enjoyed it. We just always were juggling like a little bit of, you know, Bundy had a lot on his plate throughout that time as well. Like, so we were a little bit time restricted. And I think that ended up catching us out just a little bit at the end. We'd finally put the time in and then got a really good result at the Europeans. We came second, but the damage was already done. They didn't really count that result when they selected. And, you know, they obviously made the right choice. Jason and Lisa did a pretty awesome job in Rio. And so, yeah, but I wouldn't, I just enjoyed that campaign so much. Like, I love learning. I love being thrown in the deep end. So that was, I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, as you said, you like to say yes. You jumped on again with, like you said, 49er FX, and you did a bit with Hayley Outeridge there for a while. Was that this campaign for Japan, or was that Rio?
It did. We did go on for 1 more year into this, in towards Tokyo, but I just felt like I loved sailing with Hayley. She's one of my favorite people to sail with, and we were both a little bit little for the boats as well in terms of size. I'm not very tall, so it didn't really work in our advantage. But for me, I was just finding myself a little bit like stale in the class. I didn't quite have as much passion as I've had for the other projects, and it had nothing to do with who I was sailing for. It was more, I think, just the culture in the team at the time, and a little bit of myself as well in there with what I'd been through the past 2 years. Like a little bit of a dogfight for 8 years in the last campaign's kind of caught up with me as well. And so, yeah, it was time. That's when I tried to get a job in DC and did some work over there and just kind of clear the head a little bit.
And then got the awesome opportunity to the Volvo.
Say yes again.
Exactly. And then of late, you've been doing some commentary for, we heard you and your dulcet tones doing the commentary for the 49er and the NACRA World. I think you did it both. I definitely did it in New Zealand, and I'm pretty sure you were doing Geelong there as well.
Yeah.
What was that like, being on the outside looking in?
It was unreal. You know, I just love sailing so much, and I love all the people. You know, I know so many of them that are out there and racing, and I think I've got like quite a wholesome understanding of what these athletes have been through and what's going through their head. And the commentary brings me a lot of joy. I find it really fun, and it's just nice to bring a bit of energy into it as well. I think sailing's so underrated in terms of, I know we're kind of scraping the surface now with like televising it and showcasing it to the world, but you know, it's so cool to watch, and there's so many opportunities for the sport, but unless you get like a little bit of excitement and I guess fun into watching, getting to meet the athletes, because they're all pretty awesome humans as well. You know, we idolize athletes, you know, through football over here and all the rest of it, but these people are really cool. Like, they're worth getting to know, and so being able to convey that, be the voice for these sailors, I've got a lot of passion for. So
it's not easy being a commentator of sailing, because you've got to break it down for the layman, but also be enough detail for the expert. And because you do get some criticism, oh, they're not saying enough about this. We all hear about the Hobart every year, and I think the combination of yourself and Jody, you know, was great. And, you know, it was really, really well done. And I applaud both of you for it. So I hope you're doing some in the future. That's my next question. Is there anything coming up? Am I going to see you commentate in the Olympics or do anything like that?
Yeah, I had a great gig for doing the commentary on the ground in Tokyo. But obviously, who knows when that's going to...
that's exciting. If that happens, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I was really excited for that role, especially because you're talking to the live audience as well, and we're working with other commentators for all the languages, and it was a really awesome role. But I'm also doing some stuff, but it's more in person with Sail GP, and also the Sail World Cups as well. But that's more for... it's more in person for people that are there on the day. So it's cool. I'm only just scraping the surface, I think, of that industry, but it's there's lots of opportunities out there. And I think especially it's quite cool being a woman and being in that role as well. So I'm really enjoying it. Fingers crossed. Can COVID just happen, please? Come and go.
don't even talk about it.
Yeah.
Down here in poor Melbourne or Victoria. Oh.
Yes.
Anyway, I won't even bring up that's for another day. You're very good at leading me into my next topics. Women's sailing. You are clearly one of the leading ladies of world sailing. What can be done in sailing to really push female sailing, bring it to the same level that the boys are at? What have you got to say about that?
So let's start with the Olympics, which is great, right? They're really striving towards gender equity, and in terms of opportunities on the final, you know, like once you show up is really awesome. And you can see that the countries are doing their best to, I guess, keep up to that standard that the Olympics kind of holds. So all the national corporations, you know, it's pretty equal, like leading through those pathways. You know, there's a little bit to go in that, but in terms of the rest of the sport, it's just head and shoulders above it, you know. the Volvo was pretty awesome opportunity, because obviously the edition before, the one that I did, there was the SCA girls, and that was pretty inspiring for me as a female sailor to watch these girls go around the world and stand up. You know, they did a really good job of their performance, and also the athletes that they selected on that boat found that really inspirational. But then fast forward to the next edition where the females are injected into the boats, and so all of a sudden you're just human beings on the boat, and that to me is a step forward. And that's about upskilling. And until you give females these opportunities to just jump in at the deep end and upskill, you're really there's going to be a really slow progression. And so that to me, that kind of mixed sailing, it's how I was brought up. In match racing, often it's open, and I was lucky enough that in Prince Alfred I was sailing with young Tommy Spithill, shout out. And, he took me on for all of the events, even though we would be a little bit underweight, and that was all good. But you kind of learn how to race against the boys, and it's just no different. But you can bring those skills. And so in the Volvo, I think that's where it starts, injecting females into the team for that upskill, but just not in the roles of, there's no room for that, offshore on an ocean race. Everyone's got to be able to do everything. So you're not just stuck in, the tweak trimmer or whatever. Like you're injected into the team in quite a big way. So yeah, I think that's where it's got to start, and it can't be as segregated. Those opportunities for females, like all on one boat, are awesome. And it wakes everyone up, and it injects younger sailors. I found it so inspirational for SCA, and you do it all over again. But 50% of the population is female, so you're missing out on supporters, on sponsorships, on coverage, and that's before you even speak about the actual sailors as well and the talent that's in there.
Any thoughts on how we get more young girls into the sport, or even staying in the sport? Because there seems to be it gets to a level where they disappear.
Yeah, I think the 49er FX was a really cool step for transitioning young female into there's so many cool fast boats out there, and the NACRA 17 obviously. All of a sudden there are these really cool fast boats with females from the age of, I would think I was competing against people that were 17 all the way up to 45. There's that huge age range, and they're sailing cool fast boats, and we're not, perhaps as an Olympic sailor, you're never really making a living, but you're making your way. You're keeping a roof over your head to some extent, but having something to aspire to like that, and keeping it interesting, I think, because as soon as you don't have something to look forward to and something to strive for, what's the point really? That's when you see people pulling out. And I was lucky when I was growing up with the match racing, there were these, awesome girls that were traveling around the world and racing. And for me, I was that's what I want to do. And I end up, competing against them for the Olympic spot. These girls are incredible sailors. And so just having people pave the way in that sense. But it's got to come also from the top down. So organisers of events making space for some of the female talent to have the opportunity. I mean, you don't even have to make it compulsory, but give us a chance to trial, that's the biggest thing. It's that upskill that we're really lacking at the moment, that space to go in and try and make mistakes and learn like everyone else has. We just kind of need that space opened up to us.
You and I were chatting prior to this interview, and we spoke about Sail GP, which we both love. Great idea, and I think the leader of the sport. And I know Larry and Russell both watch Shooting the Breeze with Ronstan. They're avid viewers. If there's another team to come in, or even a rule to come into the boats, it should be one female or two female per boat, or put a ladies team in, because I reckon you girls would serve it up to the boys, and I'd love to see it. And then the same goes for the Sydney to Hobart boats, Comanche, Blackjack, Wild Oats. You've got 20 people on the boat. Put 5 girls on. There's no issue. There shouldn't be any, they're just as good as anybody else. And I'd love to see it. And it would only grow the sport. And you would be leaders and doyens of it by doing it. So myself and Nina, Implore
like
you
to
all
say.
to do that. Yeah, get on board.
Because I
So,
did Sail GP was the one thing that I really had my eye on as the next project, and I just couldn't even get a trial, and I found that really disappointing. That you're not asking for anything else other than like, can I put myself out there and try? And I understand there's some pretty awesome sailors that were all really keen to jump into that program, and I can completely understand that. But even for those corporations to have like put two days aside where people can get on the boat and trial for their teams, or perhaps to see if they've got the skill set to then go to potential sponsors and so forth. It would help the cause so much, because until you get on there, you don't know your ability, and yeah, it's tough.
And you know what? You probably open yourself up to more sponsorship opportunities by getting girls involved, because
Well, it's a showcase, isn't it? The sport is a showcase. It's brilliant. It's on the harbour. It's short, sharp, fast. They're trying to build athlete stories, and yeah, they're just missing
exactly.
50% of the population.
And women's brands are looking for opportunities to showcase themselves and showcase women in sports like that, and it would be brilliant. So, as I said, I really, really encourage all the sailing big dogs out there to get more women involved. It'd be brilliant. So, let's finish off with my last question, and it's always about, how would you advise a young girl or boy growing up that want to achieve the things that you've done in sailing so far? Like, what advice do you have for the young people out there?
Just say yes. Say yes to everything. You get a ride on a Sunday, jump on it. You don't think you've got the skills, have a crack. I think every opportunity that's come my way has come from something else, and it can be so small, the opportunity, and so fleeting that you might not have time, make time for it. Put it aside and have a go, because you don't know who you'll meet or who you'll sail with and what you can learn from them. And I think as long as you're like open to learning in sailing, it's something where you're never going to be the master. Like, there's so many variables in our sport, and boats and conditions, and it's just a big old grey area. And so you'll never be the master, so you can never learn too much. And so therefore, the more you expose yourself to sailors and types of boats and conditions and everything, and then you don't know where it'll lead to. So that's my advice.
Perfect. You know what? Nathan Atteridge said the exact same thing. Nathan sails every boat under the sun, and he says, just get on board and do it, and just say yes.
Yeah.
And
don't be afraid to fail either. There's nothing scary about making a mistake. You can learn, and then you definitely won't do it again.
Yeah. Look, Nina, I really appreciate you coming on board. It's been awesome to have you. My favorite guest so far. They're only getting better and better and better. So yeah, thank you so much. And we'll leave it there.
Thank you. See you.